Between the Hashira, there is only one woman who is not only exceptionally strong, but manifests the Demon Slayer mark as well. The love Hashira Mitsuri Kanroji serves as the optimism, the heart within the Demon Slayer core. Today we'll be going over her backstory, fights, and eventual death. First, let's talk about Mitsuri Kanroji's name. As it's come to be known, there is a deeper meaning to the kanji used. Her first name has the kanji for nectar and glassy. The kanji in the Hashira's surname is sweet or sugary. And then finally, Buddhist temple. Her name follows the theme of something sweet, more likely than not a nod to her Sakura mochi diet. Mitsuri's hair is styled in 3 braids with choppy bangs. Originally, Mitsuri's hair color was a very basic black. It's noted her bizarre pink and green hair color comes from the Sakura mochi she eats. Mitsuri also has 2 beauty marks, which are underneath her green eyes. Her delicate, if not soft appearance somewhat goes against the strength she has. Fun fact, the Love Hashira eats as much as 3 sumo wrestlers. Talk about beauty and brawn. It's an interesting trope she heavily leans into. Her uniform reflects this as well. A typical Demon Slayer outfit, save for the obvious chest area and skirt. Originally, Shinobu Kocho, the insect Hashira, offered to burn the perverted creation, but Mitsuri decided to keep it. But before we go any further, don't forget to subscribe with notifications on for some plot armor today. As always, we've got you guys covered, and hit that like button to help the plot army grow even stronger. Interestingly enough, Mitsuri wears not 1, but 2 gifted pieces of clothing, both her plain white haori and her iconic striped thigh-high socks. The haori was given to Mitsuri from her mentor and later fellow Hashira Kyojiro Rengoku, while the socks were from Obanai. Speaking of which, as we discuss later, the two share a bond that is quite possibly my favorite relationship in the series. Plus, they have a very storybook ending that is not only satisfying but exactly perfect for them, which we'll of course get into later. Mitsuri grew up with 5 siblings. She mentions getting along with all of them, which perhaps explains how doting she is to Nezuko. By the time she was 1 year old, Mitsuri was able to lift 33 pounds. Talk about ridiculous. Even from a young age, she displayed an innate strength. However, her own brawn is what led Mitsuri to dyeing her hair. She desperately wanted to fit in to find a husband, something she wanted so badly that she would risk her life for it, but we'll touch on that further on. Besides dyeing her hair, Mitsuri also ate far less, leaving her feeling faint constantly. Truthfully, trying to conform was the result of rather harsh marriage rejections. For context, this happens when Mitsuri is 17, 2 years before the current events of Kimetsu no Yaiba. Hiding her true self is very unlike the Love Hashira though. As noted in the second fanbook, Mitsuri has an openness of 90%, so it's easy to tell she wears her heart on her sleeve, perhaps quite literally with her risque uniform. Anyway, Mitsuri later joins the Demon Slayer Corps. Unlike other Slayers who join because of a personal tragedy or vendetta, Mitsuri joins to find a husband. She trains under Kyojiro, passing final selection in only 6 months. Clearly a gifted swordsman from the start. Mitsuri then goes on to form a close, brotherly bond with Kyojiro. But unlike the Flame Hashira, Mitsuri struggled to properly use flame breathing. Her flexible, ballerina-like movements didn't mesh well with the more high stance, singular slashes that make up the flame breathing forms. In fact, Mitsuri later develops her signature love breathing shortly after graduating into the Corps, deriving it from flame breathing. Let's touch on that. Actually, considering it is presumably the first big fight Mitsuri participates in, Kyojiro is tasked with eliminating a 12 Kizuki that is operating within Tokyo. He takes a group of slayers, one of them being Mitsuri. During this time, she wears simple ankle-high boots, no striped socks, or white haori. Immediately, Mitsuri is impressed by Kyojiro's leadership, even having admiration that they're wearing matching white haoris. After all, this comes from Kyojiro's Gaiden spin-off, but it does reveal similarities between the two. Both Hashira have unusual hair colors and are judged because of it. Kyojiro of course knows what that is like. After a mother with her son is critical of Mitsuri's hair, Kyojiro reassures her that appearances aren't everything. If anything, he fits perfectly as her mentor because of this. The Hashira's morality is practically built off of being selfless and using her unusual strength to protect others, especially when it is harmful to her own being. After Kyojiro realizes there are bombs scattered around the capital, he sends Mitsuri and the others to defuse them. Finally, it's Mitsuri's time to prove herself. She struggles to cut down the wolf spawned by lower rank 2, Hyro, despite her immense strength. Her sword, which is a typical Nichiren katana, gets stuck in them, at least until she sees the mother and son duo from earlier. Mitsuri, summoning the inner willpower she learned from Kyojiro, effortlessly defends them. It's an epic moment that shows Mitsuri is just as capable as her peers. This is exactly when she uses her graceful, fluid love breathing style. To add to the impressive feat, she protects the mother and son all while juggling a bomb. Besides that, she's able to employ this style with a rigid sword. Really, it further enforces the fact that her whip-like katana is perfect for her dance-esque, flowy breathing style. Finally, developing her own breath also has Mitsuri realize that the Demon Slayer Corps is a place she could call home, a place where she's accepted for who she is, even with bizarre pink hair and raw, unorthodox strength. The mother and son thank her afterwards, further cementing that Mitsuri is simply more than appearance and power. As Kyojiro told her previously, she has a heart that loves people. Rather, is this very loving nature that allows her to even overcome her own hang-ups in several fights. In the end, Mitsuri and the other slayers are able to stop the bombs, while Kyojiro earns his Hashira status, having killed the lower rank 2 demon. Sometime after, Mitsuri becomes a Hashira as well, and is given her iconic ribbon sword. By the way, in the comments below, don't forget to let us know what you think of Mitsuri's backstory. Now, let's talk about this Hashira's abilities and breathing style. Originally, Mitsuri used flame breathing taught to her by none other than Kyojiro Rengoku. Mitsuri employs the use of love breathing, a breathing style that she herself created, which is a feat in the Kimetsu no Yaiba universe, of course. There are only several other swordsmen we know of that have created their own distinct breathing styles. That being said, Mitsuri's love breathing is unique due to her rather unorthodox body composition. Despite Mitsuri's small frame, she's able to withstand a point-blank sound attack. Her dense 8-fold muscles, of which are strong enough to later rip off Muzan's arm, combined with flexible joints, allows the Demon Slayer to utilize a whip-like Nichiren sword. Mitsuri's flexibility is exactly why she's able to use such a bizarrely shaped sword. It's notable that this sword is not easy to use. Its ribbon-esque structure could easily cut the user. Because of its non-linear shape, the sword must be folded to fit into her sheath. Her sword is pink in color, and its hilt has a 4-leaf clover. Typical of other Demon Slayer equipment, the blade has Destroyer of Demons engraved. Not to mention, it's a sword she wields expertly enough to be faster than the sound Hashira, Tengen Uzui. Her speed allows the Hashira to kill minions spawned by upper rank 5 Yoko before they can even react. Mitsuri's precise swordsmanship would also come into play during her fight with upper rank 4, Hantengu's clone, Zohakuten. Lastly, some of her attacks hold references to cats, such as 3rd form, Cat Lover Shower, and 6th form, Cat-Legged Winds of Love. Like Yome Himejima, the Stone Hashira, Mitsuri is a lover of felines. When Tanjiro Kamado is on trial at the Ubuyashiki residence, Mitsuri's inner thoughts reveal that she anguished at the possibility of killing the Kamado siblings. She also admires Gyuto Miyoka's aloofness in the matter, and the Serpent Hashira Obanai Iguro's natural cool. Regardless, she does question if the Hashira should decide before their leader, Ubuyashiki, arrives. Speaking of which, he's someone else that Mitsuri looks up to. She fondly remembers the time when he told her to value her strength. Those who speak poorly of it were merely jealous. That being said, the Love Hashira has plenty of love for her peers. During the meeting, she thinks that the Wind Hashira's enemy looks manly with his new scars. Plus, she fangirls a bit over Shinobu losing her temper. She has quite the running commentary, really. Besides having an inner monologue, Mitsuri is expressive as well. She was horrified when Tsunemi stabbed Nezuko, and tried to stifle a laugh when Tanjiro headbutts the Hashira in retaliation. That being said, she is envious when Tsunemi greets Kaguya. When Kaguya says he'll accept the Kanado siblings, Mitsuri agrees without hesitation. Of course, this puts her at odds with the other Hashira. Particularly enough, this includes Obanai and Kyojiro, among others. But ultimately, the Hashira are swayed by Nezuko's actions, or rather inactions, against Tsunemi. The Hashira would then meet as they customarily do. Unfortunately though, Mitsuri soon faces personal strife. Following the death of Kyojiro, Mitsuri was notified by Crow. Like all the Hashira, it's a small interaction, but she does express visible grief. As previously mentioned, Mitsuri was trained under Kyojiro. He was her cultivator and the first person to really accept her within the core. His influence is most likely why Mitsuri is as protective as she is. After all, she is physically blessed, and Kyojiro's belief was that the strong should protect the weak. Not to mention, his death is a grim reminder of untimely death. Despite the camaraderie within the organization, it's noted that Mitsuri would sometimes shake with anger and sadness. Even the Love Hashira has a limit. Later on, the Love Hashira encounters Tanjiro at the Swordsmith village, where she's getting her iconic sword sharpened. She first learns of his arrival when she hears his voice while in the natural hot spring. After a disastrous interaction with Genya, Tsunemi's younger brother, she runs to Tanjiro, tears in her eyes. As we mentioned before, she's expressive, usually by crying or getting so flustered that she seizes up. But this arc is the crying for sure, especially during her major fight later. Unsurprisingly, Mitsuri is calmed once Tanjiro mentions what's for dinner. Speaking of supper, Mitsuri learns that Tsunemi has a brother, despite the former denying Genya's existence. She seems saddened by the implication of their poor relationship, presumably due to her nature as a sort of big sister, which is something Mitsuri and those around her think of her as. She's nurturing, especially so with the criminally small Nezuko. They play together and she holds Nezuko's hand. It's a soft interaction between the two that shows Mitsuri is like the heart of the Hashira. On the topic of Hashira, Mitsuri explains to Tanjiro she joined the Corps originally to find a husband, which sounds like a really silly reason to risk one's life with demon encounters, yet in Mitsuri's case, she wants a husband who is stronger than she is. Quite frankly, that is a tall order in itself. After all, she has 8 times the normal muscle density. This conundrum is what leads her into the Hashira, elite swordsmen who are the only equals to her strength. Of course, this creates an eventual connection between Mitsuri and Obanai. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to Mitsuri and Tanjiro. Her sword is finally sharpened. Before she leaves, Mitsuri tells Tanjiro that there is a secret weapon in the village that will make him stronger. She leaves, but comes into play during the siege by upper ranks Hantengu and Gyoko. Her district is close to the swordsmith village, meaning the love Hashira was alerted to the attack and doubled back. At last, more satisfying scenes from Mitsuri. She arrives at the village and promptly slays a gigantic humanoid demon fish. It easily dwarfs her. That being said, she's able to save the chief in the process. Comically, the chief remarks he must be in heaven because a cute girl is holding him. Eventually, she makes her way to Tanjiro, Genya, and Nezuko as they fight off Hantengu's clone, Zohakuten. In fact, Tanjiro himself is practically swallowed until Mitsuri cuts him out of a tree dragon. Mitsuri is understandably unnerved by the huge creatures, but still speaks to Zohakuten like he's a child. Zohakuten attacks her with multiple tree dragons. However, the Hashira cuts down the two serpentine creations effortlessly. Multiple combatants must be ideal for her breathing style, really. Her sword naturally wraps around, allowing for more AoE coverage. No wonder she became a Hashira. This fight is the best showcase of Mitsuri's love breathing. She evades several tree dragons and their attacks, all while avoiding Zohakuten trying to smother her. Her speed is something that even Tanjiro notices, but it'll take more than evasion and agility to defeat Zohakuten. He uses a sound attack, but as touched on before, Mitsuri survives due to her muscle mass. She's able to sit up, body tensed, despite going unconscious from the attack. She wakes up just as Tanjiro, Genya, and Nezuko save her from Zohakuten. The trio vow to protect her. Mitsuri is a Hashira, and as Tanjiro says, as long as she's alive, we can still win. Inspired by her comrades, Mitsuri deflects another Zohakuten attack. She cries and says she won't let her friends die. Finally, Mitsuri gives her all against the upper rank Hantengu. The love Hashira stops holding back her raw strength and unlocks her Demon Slayer mark, which we later learn the secret origins and risks of. Her mark is two hearts, one on top, the other on the bottom, with sort of petal-esque wing shapes on either side. It appears on her neck and is as girly as the Hashira herself is. Despite being the only female Hashira with the mark, she's ultimately unable to explain how exactly she manifested. Simply put, Mitsuri manages to keep up with Zohakuten because of it. She acts as a distraction for the younger Slayers to find Hantengu. Because of this, she uses multiple forms that begin to drain her. With her limited stamina and dawn approaching, the fight is a race against time. Thankfully, Tanjiro and company are able to behead Hantengu. A tree dragon dissolves before her just as the Hashira gives up, crying and bloodied. Despite her crybaby nature, Mitsuri displays such a drive to protect her subordinates during this fight. As Tanjiro had said, she was a light of hope for them. Afterwards, she would meet up with the trio, hugging them. She was relieved they had all survived, which appears almost bittersweet considering Kyojiro's recent death. And that covers the Swordsmith Village arc. Let us know below, are you excited for Mitsuri's appearance in Season 3? After this mission, a special Hashira meeting is called. Before it begins, Obanai asks how both the Mist Hashira Muichiro Tokito and Mitsuri are holding up. The Hashira gives a positive response, with Mitsuri internally gushing over Obanai being concerned about her. The meeting is presided over Kagaya's wife, Amane. Not only have the two Hashira manifested their marks, but a demon has overcome the sun, meaning Muzan will most likely make his move soon, escalating the strife into an all-out war. Which he certainly does, quite explosively, I may add. But anyhow, Amane wants to discuss the Demon Slayer marks. She explains the origin of them. Demon Slayer marks originally appeared during the golden age of demon slaying. They faded in obscurity though. Amane would ask Mitsuri how she was able to manifest the Demon Slayer mark, and in typical absent-minded Mitsuri fashion, she describes the process in a series of sound effects. Somewhat embarrassed by her own response, she apologizes. However, Muichiro is able to shed light on the Demon Slayer marks and their developments. It is then decided that each Hashira needs to manifest their mark, which means more training. Plus, training would allow marked ones to maintain their Demon Slayer mark status. Amane leaves after this, but there is some tension between Gyu and Tsunemi. Mitsuri attempts to timidly stop the two verbally. Thankfully, the gentle giant, the Stone Hashira Gyome Himejima, would then break them up. Mitsuri's training is the third stop in the bracket of Hashira. Her specialty? Flexibility, of course. Granted, the Hashira's idea of training is rather unorthodox. She serves tea and pancakes before putting the lower rank swordsmen through her regime. The Slayers wear ballet leotards and dance to music. Mitsuri's choice of outfit for them is odd, sure. However, the real kicker is her flexibility training. This involves Mitsuri using her brute strength to help the Slayers stretch, though Tanjiro refers to this as hell. But the love Hashira's training is only a drop in the bucket compared to Obanai's. Obanai puts Tanjiro through the ringer because, as Mitsuri said in a letter, the two canonically exchange letters and eat together, little moments that cement them as a couple by the way. She enjoyed training with him. Speaking of which, the final fight further pushes the Obanai and Mitsuri agenda. Not only that, but Mitsuri will sacrifice life and limbs in the most decisive battle which changes humanity forever. In fact, let's go over that now. Kibutsuji Muzan meets with a dying Kagaya. They chat briefly before Kagaya blows up not only his home and himself, but his wife and 2 children as well. They were willing to risk it all. This massive explosion triggers emergency summons for all the slayers within the area. Mitsuri's reaction to the bombing is surprise and horror. Kagaya had refused a Hashira bodyguard, meaning, like the rest of her peers, Mitsuri was powerless, yet she wasn't useless. The Hashira launched multiple coordinated attacks against Muzan. Muzan would then be desperate enough to use the Infinity Castle. It is a demon blood art used by Nakime, upper rank 4. The Slayers, +1, Demon Lord, then fall into this extra dimensional castle. Obanai and Mitsuri land together. The Serpent Hashira kills multiple demons in a single strike almost immediately, which leaves Mitsuri enamored. She's flustered but agrees to follow Obanai. The pair find Nakime, a newly minted upper rank demon directly responsible for the Infinity Castle. Mitsuri, wanting Shinobu's death to not be in vain, tries to attack the demon. Regrettably, Nakime blocks it. A falling Mitsuri is then saved by Obanai. As previously stated, this arc is arguably the best at portraying the unrequited love between the two. Mitsuri is embarrassed for being so gung-ho. Being her opposite, Obanai suggests they watch Nakime and remain calm. Neither of them are quite sure of her blood demon art, at least until Mitsuri is almost crushed to death. She frees herself and realizes that the castle is like an extension of Nakime's body. Once again, she goes in to behead the upper rank. The Hashira is unsuccessful and is sent flying through a window. Mitsuri is able to grab a ledge, avoiding falling to her death. Nakime would then continually stall the 2 Hashira, despite her space-altering demon blood art being more troublesome than anything, but there is further pressure. A crow alerts them that Muzan has returned. Their orders are to group up, yet help will come from an unlikely source. Then would enter the demon Yushiro. He manipulates Nakime's sight, forcing the illusion of Mitsuri and Obanai dead. Muzan sees this and falsely brags of their death to Tanjiro and Gyu. Then Mitsuri makes a rather dramatic entrance. She smashes through a wall, surprising even Muzan. Obanai meanwhile saves Tanjiro. Finally face to face with the Demon King, Mitsuri is comically shocked that he is unarmed. Anyway, perhaps due to their blood demon art and superhuman abilities, Muzan is enraged by the Hashira's appearance. Cursing Nakime, he battles with Yushiro for control of the castle. The structure around them shakes and changes constantly. In fact, Mitsuri loses her footing several times. The instability is enough for her to lose focus, for Muzan to strike her. Fortunately, Tanjiro saves her by throwing a broken sword into the Demon Lord's head. Muzan and Yushiro's mental battle erupts into the surface, quite literally as the group is forced up to the surface. The stars and moon are visible now. Only an hour and a half remain before dawn, before Muzan can truly be defeated. Alongside Gyu and Obanai, Mitsuri launches an attack against Muzan. The trio are able to cut him, however Muzan regenerates the very moment he's injured, making it as if he never was to begin with. Surrounded by the Hashira, Muzan unleashes a sweeping AoE attack, and the lower ranked slayers would intercept it. Bodies of their comrades are all around them. Mitsuri is especially upset by this. The Demon Slayer core has become her home, a place she can be who she is and is celebrated for it. She would beg her fellow Slayers to not do it, but in the midst of this bloody battle, Tanjiro seemingly falls dead. Mitsuri is visibly shocked, just like the other Hashira. Undeterred, the Hashira would continue to fight Muzan. His speed would overwhelm them, leading to 3 of them being wounded. Mitsuri's injury then surges with pain. She narrowly avoids Muzan's whip with the sudden intervention of Gyome. QA relieved, crying Mitsuri. The battle rages on, but Mitsuri's speed keeps building, enough so that Mitsuri can only dodge based on luck and intuition. Even that isn't enough. She realizes something is dragging her down. Before Mitsuri could properly react, Muzan's whip slices her shoulder and right cheek, practically tearing the cheek off. Immediately, Obanai rushes to her aid. He's always been in love with her, the exact same way Mitsuri has always admired, if not loved him. In the heat of the fight, Obanai manages to sneak Mitsuri to other slayers, but like her mentor Kyojiro, Mitsuri won't give up. She insists that she hasn't helped at all yet. She can't die now. Her statements go back to the very ideal Kyojiro taught her. The strong should protect the weak. Ultimately, Obanai would leave her in the care of other swordsmen. She attempts to go after him, but can't even get up. Mitsuri then cries. She pleads for Obanai to not get killed. The love Hashira can't bear any more deaths. She has not only had to face the untimely demise of her peer and mentor, but the countless swordsmen who sacrificed themselves. Though later on, Mitsuri shows just how courageous and full of willpower she is. Finally, we've come to probably the best moment for Mitsuri. I'm talking about when the love Hashira rejoins the battle for the last time. While Muzan is pinned to a wall, Mitsuri grabs his arm barehanded and rips it off. With tears in her eyes, she tells the demon lord to cut it out, once again sternly telling off a demon. Regrettably, in the process, she sacrifices her arm. She passes out, surely from the blood loss. When the love Hashira comes to, she's in the arms of a severely injured Obanai. His striped haori is draped around her. She asks if Muzan was defeated. Obanai assures her he was, and she delivers the news she'll die soon. The serpent Hashira agrees that he'll die with her. She won't go alone. Despite her love for him, Mitsuri begs him to not die, and again states she wasn't useful during the battle. Obanai insists that isn't true and recounts the time they first met. In his eyes, Mitsuri was such a normal girl, regardless of the harsh training she received, so full of happiness and life that Obanai felt normal himself. And at long last, Mitsuri confessed to him. She asks to be his bride if they are reincarnated, and he agrees. The two then pass in each other's warm company. But not to worry, they're giving the storybook ending they deserve. Speaking of reincarnation, let's skip to the future in Kimetsu no Yaiba. While Yoshiteru, Toko, and Kanata, Toko suggests they eat at a local diner after class. Ironically, it serves large portions of food. The decor is also snake-themed. This restaurant is run by none other than the reincarnates of Mitsuri and Obanai, who are happily married, with 5 kids, I might add. It's such a satisfying ending to see 2 star-crossed lovers united together in a world without demons. Thank you so much for watching to the very end. Until next time, keep that plumber on you. I'm KJ. Have a great day. Goodbye.